private to remove.
Okay, 601, we'll call this regular scheduled meeting of the Hillsville City Council to order. First item on the agenda is the invocation given by Bishop Billy Clark of the Believers Christian Union. Please stand.
Let us pray. All the things once again today, all the praises, all the city council members, everyone that's involved in it tonight, Father, we pray that you give them the wisdom and knowledge to lead the city in the direction we have to go. Father, we're so blessed and thankful that we have opportunities to pray in the name of Christ and we pray. Amen.
Please face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is hearsay of some person's mission to address the council. We have a couple here. The first one is Mr. Keebler. Ms. Keebler, I'm sorry.
How you doing, sir?
Good. Please state your name and please understand, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And council cannot respond to any questions you may have.
Okay. Okay, starting now, right? All right. Good evening, council members, mayor, chief. My name is Amy Howell, and I speak today not just for myself, but for every Hillsborough resident who is homeless, transient, or low income. People who are too often ignored, harassed, or treated as if their presence is a nuisance by businesses, and even more troubling, by the very officers sworn to uphold everyone's rights. Loitering accusations are often just a mask for discrimination. The U.S. Supreme Court in Papachuse versus City of Jacksonville, 405 U.S. 156, struck down vague vacancy laws because they allowed officers to enforce personal bias, not objective standards. In Martin versus City of Boise, the court said criminalizing homelessness when no shelter alternatives exist violates the 8th Amendment. That's exactly the kind of abuse I experienced. I was at Love's a customer, mind you, when I was told I'd overstayed. There was no posted limits. The manager admitted if I was a truck driver, I wouldn't care how long you were here. That's not policy, that's profiling. It's class-based bias discrimination, plain and simple. After leaving the property and going elsewhere to conduct business, I was confronted by Corporal Linderman. She detained me without legal cause and threatened me under Texas Penal Code 3802, claiming I was required to identify. That's false. The Hebel versus 6th Judicial Court ruling is clear in Texas. You're only required to identify if you are lawfully arrested. A detention without reasonable suspicion or probable cause doesn't trigger that statute, nor was there valid authority under Penal Code 3005 to issue a criminal trespass warning based on hearsay from a private business with no clear request from property management. Sorry. Worse, Corporal Lindemann mocked me, calling me one of those First Amendment people, and belittled my history with law enforcement. She even dismissed my prior complaint by saying of Officer Perkins, he's leaving at the end of the week. That isn't just unprofessional, it violates the unethical standards of law enforcement conduct. And then Mayor Sparks wrongly stated complaints must be notarized to be valid. That's legally incorrect under the First and 14th Amendments. Complainants can be made verbally, in writing, anonymously, and without a notary. Brady versus Maryland reminds us that all misconduct must be addressed, regardless of how the evidence is presented. Council, I'm urging action update training and discriminatory policy, and eliminate barriers to reporting abuse. Justice and dignity shouldn't depend on your wallet, housing status, or appearance. They belong to us all. Thank you.
Next person wishing to address the council, Carolyn Rodriguez. Again, Carolyn, just state your name and understand your comments in 3 minutes.
Okay, so my name is Sarah, and I'm a police activist, and I'm the person that demands transparency and accountability from the police. And we have a little phrase that says, you know, if blue is it happens to you, so if you experience something like this, you won't understand. So, first of all, I address the video that everybody's been talking about. Gentlemen, also reviewing this video. And some people in here haven't seen that video, so I'm going to explain about that video. My friend was at the Love's truck stop over here. She demanded her release. She walked across to McDonald's and she's ordering some food. And in come 3 officers. And imagine you're just sitting there and 3 armed guys come in, all dressed up in there in military outfits and amazing to me. They stand over you and they start to talk to her and they tell her, you're trespassing across the street. Now, what we need from you is your identification. Well, my friend tried to explain to them that in Texas, 3802 says you only have to identify if you are under arrest. Failure to identify is not a standalone. It's not a standalone crime. So the person trying to explain this to her, to the officer told her, look, if you don't give your ID, we're going to take you to jail. So she gave up her ID. So she actually had her rights violated. She had to give up her identification because for trespassing, you do not need to get someone's name for that. No. In Texas, you only need somebody's name if they are being put under arrest. So that's concerning to me that the officer had telling her that she was making it hard on herself. My question is, since when is standing for your rights and inconvenience for officers? More concerning is that it seems like officers here have this us versus them mentality. And even while wearing body cams, this female officer was condescending and rude to my friend. And how is she doing that on body cam? Why would she do that on body cam? Why would she give evidence against herself? That's because they're all doing it. It's the norm here. It's the police culture here. It's here they have a culture of us versus them mentality. And the reason why they have that is because we're trained to be that way. In other words, we're trained that loyalty is paramount to each other. Loyalty to each other is paramount. And the training emphasizes a confrontational approach rather than a communication approach. So it reinforces this mindset. So my question is the chief not aware of this going on in his own department? I mean, how does he not know this is going on? Could it be because he's not only the police chief, he's the fire chief, assistant manager, assistant city manager. He also works I heard community college or something as an instructor. And how is he an instructor? How is he an instructor that he doesn't even have, he has a male literary diploma? It's not even a real diploma, it's a male literary diploma. How much money is he making? And why do we have 50 cops here for an 8,000 population?
10 seconds.
Most 10 seconds? Most police places like this only have 20 cops, not 50 like this. So the chief, he needs to stop, he needs to, I got to statistics, so I'm not going to say this, but he needs to be more transparent and he needs to be more hold people accountable. That's what I'm saying. I have a lot more to say, but
Okay, we have one more for the open comments. The watchdog. Please state your name and please again limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Where to start? Well, good evening. It's time to come talk about the corrupt culture embedded within the Hillsborough Police Department, Chief Tony Kane, all the way down to their so-called training officers. This department has repeatedly shown they have no respect for their citizens, no respect for their own policies, and definitely no respect for the Constitution of the United States. Just ask Amy Howell. She was unlawfully detained, harassed, and threatened with arrest, all because she exercised her First Amendment right to report the police. Manager at Lowe's called 911 after Amy had already left the property, but instead of verifying facts or even speaking to the complaint first, Hillsborough officers hunted her down across the street at McDonald's and forced her to hand over her identification of her threatened arrest. That's not law enforcement, that's intimidation. And it's a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment. In Terry v. Ohio, the Supreme Court ruled that officers must have reasonable, articulable suspicion to detain someone. In Florida, another Supreme Court ruling, Florida v. JL, the court held that anonymous tip alone is not enough to justify a stop. These officers had neither, yet they detained Amy anyway. Amy wasn't trespassing, she complied and left. But Hillsborough PD, desperate to flex authority, retaliated. Corporal Roseanne and intervened. The field training officer just didn't lose her temper. She mocked Amy's knowledge of the law, dismissed her rights, and treated her like a threat simply because she held a camera and refused to be silent. That's not a lapse in professionalism, that's corruption. Corporal Liberty should not just be fired. She should be charged under Texas Penal Code 39.03 for official oppression of use of office, for using her position of power to unlawfully detain and intimidate a citizen engaging in protected conduct. But let's be clear, it's not an isolated incident. Another item, whether it's disciplinary record. The department has a long, disturbing pattern, and it becomes refusing to accept internal affairs complaints that I experienced personally. Shutting down citizen concerns before they're even heard. People are afraid to speak at city council because they fear retaliation, because they've seen what happens to people who speak up. In Hillsborough, silence just isn't common, it's enforced. And meanwhile, the same department that crushes public dissent and evicts people from the extended stage without due process, treats poverty as a crime, and walks around with body armor and no accountability. So let me say this without hesitation. Fire Chief Tony Kane, fire every officer involved in this incident, and fire and charge Corporal Liberman. It's time to cut the head off the state and start over before rights are trampled, more lives ruined, and more voices are silenced. Because the police department that believes it's above the law just isn't failing, it's dangerous. And it's up to us, the people, to hold them accountable. If you play stupid games, you earn stupid prizes.
We're going to move along to the consent agenda. Deliberate and act on the approval of minutes for the regular meeting on April 15, 2025. Act on the approval of bills. Deliberate and act on a resolution authorizing the city's cemetery department to advertise for bids regarding groundskeeping services. Deliberate and act on a resolution appointing a member to the Historic Preservation Commission. And deliberate and act on a resolution directing staff to dispose of salvage, surplus, personal property. Council, does anybody have any questions about any one of those individual items? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
City Secretary.
Councilmember Wood.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson. Aye. Councilmember Richmond. Aye. Councilmember Butler.
Moving on to the regular agenda, hold a public hearing, second reading, and deliberate and act on an ordinance establishing regulations for murals in the city of Hillsborough.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This being the second reading, I won't go into too many details. The Historic Preservation Commission and Main Street Board of Gold Review draft requirements for murals in the downtown area. Both boards have recommended approval of that. The Main Street Board reviewed on April 16th, the day after the first reading, and they for the recommendation with minimal text changes. In that ordinance, we've got a mural being defined, as you see up on the screen. I won't read through all of those, with this being the second reading. The murals in general created, that approval will come from the Main Street Board, and for properties that are covered by the historic cultural landmark preservation overlay, will require a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission. If those determinations are in conflict, then we will have the final approval of the proposed mural. Within the draft ordinance, there are sections on requirements, enforcement, and additional technical issues to be considered in terms of new murals and also those murals. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to entertain those.
Thanks, Richard. Any, council, any questions?
I have a question. And part of this is my fault, because for whatever reason I wasn't here on the 15th. But timing wise, if you wanted to put a mural in downtown, then it would be under the historic overlay. So you're gonna have to get approval from Main Street and approval from the historic preservation. What kind of time frame are we talking about for that to take place?
Excellent question. I'm glad you asked that. So the order in which historic preservation and Main Street would be reviewing it wouldn't necessarily have to be one before the other, so they can be on the agenda for the same month. And then it would just go from there. So the timeline would be within a couple of weeks, really. I mean, the longest is if it would have to go to council, maybe 3 weeks at most. So that timeline wouldn't be too lengthy.
That was my main concern, to make sure we weren't making it arduous or very, 2 months timeline, to get approval from one, and from the other.
Right.
Possible council. Okay, thank you.
Council, any more questions? Again, this is a second hearing, or second reading, so we'll open up to anyone in the audience that would like to address item number 10 on the agenda.
You'll be here.
I think you can speak loud enough. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll try. Going back through the mural ordinance that I was receiving a copy from Cheryl, there were a few concerning things that I feel like could potentially make it a little more clear and increase the duration of murals for future. Looking at the standards for wall placement and removal, item number 4, says each wall mural should be secured in a manner that will require minimal repair to the wall after removal of the mural. There was suggestions in all the research that I've done that any kind of enamel should be attached to mortar, not masonry, and that seems to be something very important to maintain the historic aspect of the building integrity. So that is something in all my research that would be highly encouraged to add. In the same section, number 8, letter C, it looks like all surface cleaning of the portion of the wall mural or underlying wall adjacent shall use a means that will not disturb the features, color, texture, other visual qualities, accelerate deterioration, or otherwise impair the structure. The previous one mentioned sandblasting, and a common way of cleaning the surface is power washing. It may be helpful to limit the power washing to 200 psi or it will damage the building. Looking at page 6 of 8, I'm not sure if it was an error in the one that I received, but there was no page 5 and the suggested ordinance, so I'm not sure if it's just missing from this document or if it's missing in general, but there's no page 5 on the one that I received. The enforcement section, it looks like if there's a violation of any of the listed items, including, peeling from a mural that wasn't properly, I'm not sure what word to use, any kind of impairment to the actual mural would then go back to the building owner, and they can actually be charged with a misdemeanor if they don't fix it within 30 days. That to me feels a little extreme. I'm also wondering, is the city going to be helping to maintain these murals, which is a common thing in other towns nearby? The funding has primarily been by donation and grants. But the Hillsborough Arts League has been hugely advocating, and I think they're pretty much the only ones really working to see this thing happen. There are some other towns that are known for their murals, like Lompoc, California. They currently have 35 murals and are the highest draw town of all mural areas in the U.S. And they were successful in raising funds by doing a roundup for murals on their water bills, which is just a voluntary thing that can be done to help increase the funding. as we're finding out with the mural submissions, we've got some for what, 50 grand? Like, these are not cheap things, and these are things that will bring people to town. I know that we are currently looking at the comprehensive plan. I'm wondering if part of the economic development could be considered city funding for murals that would increase tourism, or maybe matching contributions to the donations and grants. But this was a 10-year process for this town just to come up with the funding, and then an additional 13 years to complete 35 murals. So it took them 20-something years to make this happen. I'm going to be really old at that point, so I'm hoping we can get this going a little faster. But the future fundraising, once they make enough money for the murals, they then are using that fundraising for the maintenance of the murals, because that is a costly endeavor as we continue to look at it aging correctly. I think that was everything for the enforcement section, but it just seemed that it's putting back all of the ownership on the owner of the building, and the city is requiring all these things, but not really helping in the maintenance aspect, so, or even the funding aspect. Additional issues, number 5 on the new mural item, letter A. Number 2, it suggests that brick should not be painted on due to the moisture trapped within a brick, which is traditionally true. Although I'm not sure the age of our buildings. Prior to 1870, there are no porous bricks that actually do need paint to protect it. So depending on the age of the building, paint can actually protect the building and increase its longevity. And then number 3 on that item for new murals, it says that they can last a long time as long as they do not cover all the bricks, which is true. About 50% of the mural coverage will leave enough breathable room. Any more than 50% will cause issues with the moisture that we've seen. There's also products that are breathable masonry paints, like lime wash paints, that would be great, and they don't necessarily have to be sealed. And they tend to repair themselves. This is the same material that was used in brick for many, many years, and you will see this self-healing brick that have lime in it, and the lime is actually part of the process that will make it long-lasting and still breathable. The last item I had, I believe, was on the next page, number 4, under the new mural section. It says typically the best advice has been to paint the mural on a separate panel and mount it onto the building. That is definitely a desirable method. I'm wondering if we need to clarify the types of materials that should be used. There are 3 that I've researched that are the best materials possible to make sure that the mural will last a long time. An aluminum composite panel, you generally 1/4 inch is the minimum. That is the most desirable material that can be used. The second, it would be the medium density overlay or a plywood panel. They tend to age less well, but they are a little more affordable. And then finally, an option that isn't really addressed in here anywhere is called a non-woven media, which is basically like a parachute fabric. The great thing about this is for larger scale murals, like the one that we're looking at, is 15 by 30. That's really high up for any human. So this material can actually have the mural printed on it. And it's breathable material, it's already been sealed, and you just apply it to the building with a breathable acrylic gel medium. Polytab is the most common in this country, and is the best brand available. So that would be an option that would be an alternative to panels that is still not considered painting, that would be very desirable and very affordable, and would last for a long time. We talked about the attaching the mortar on masonry. I think that's it for me, but if you have any questions on murals, we've been doing a lot of research and diligence in that area, so we can be a resource if you need it. Thank you.
Richard, any comments on
Cindy,
Any comments?
I'm wanting to make sure I understood everything. I've got page 5 right here. Yes, would you like to take a look at it?
Requirements would increase the stringency of the ordinance, would essentially be more specific in terms of what we would require of property owners. I think the balance that we're usually trying to strike is to be only as restrictive
that should be the property owners. Yeah, that's up to the property owner, it's their stuff, it's their money, it's their project. But there's a lot in what, Ms. Thrasher has suggested, and it, would not be inappropriate to, not take action and just review all of those recommendations piece by piece. There may be additional thoughts, that we'll have in the meeting tonight.
Couldn't we always manually, later, rather than, I think that's the move, but.
I would say this is the first ordinance we got, right? I would say let's take no action. All right, in regards to the, public hearing and second reading, we would take no action on the.
Is there anything else on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody else in the audience that would like to address this? I'm sorry.
Well, I have a quick question, I think, really, Richard, the historic overlay, some of the buildings that we are in talks with, that our city is in talks with to do murals, the building owners, their buildings are not necessarily historic buildings, but that's what my question is, is there an actual area that covers that? Are we gonna have to consider where that is when we're looking at possible?
Thank you for asking that question. I apologize for not showing this map yet. So this map shows how the downtown historic district and the Main Street area overlays. So there's a gray line on this map. Wrong button. This grayish line are the Main Street boundaries. And then I'll come over here. That gray line is the Main Street boundaries. And then the areas that are outlined in blue with the hash pattern show the areas covered by the historic cultural landmark preservation overlay in the downtown historic district. So if it's a property that is not covered by the overlay, then that mural would only need approval for Main Street. If it's covered by the overlay, then it would need a certificate of appropriate use from historic preservation also.
Is this available anywhere?
Absolutely, I'd be more than happy to email it to you, print a copy for you, just whatever method you would prefer, just let me know. Good.
I have a question, actually. I know in the mural ordinance, reading that it had mentioned that paint was not going to be recommended for murals on the historic buildings. I'm wondering, is that include buildings that have already been painted? Because there are some buildings that have already been painted that would then not make any difference if we put a mural on top of that.
The proposed ordinance doesn't go into that much detail. If the brick had already been painted, that would be a little bit of a different circumstance, and if it's just the actual brick is still exposed. Yeah. That's something that we take into account.
Well, I heard what Megan said about maybe not taking action immediately, is that what you were saying? That it's hard to do.
Yeah, so one of the options that the council has, the council could go ahead and approve the ordinance. They could approve the ordinance with a change. But we've heard a bunch of things. So probably too many to put in the form of a motion. So another thing that they could do is they could not take action tonight and then review the list of things that were suggested to be considered, and then staff could make some recommendations about those, and they can look at it again in 2 weeks.
I would certainly be all for waiting and, doing a little more research before going forward on an ordinance that needs some work anyway. And it sounds like since this is our first time doing the ordinance, maybe we do need to think about some other things.
Anybody else in the audience that would like to, have a comment on this agenda item? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Things that say council will take no action. Moving along to the next agenda item, hold a public hearing, first reading, and deliberate on the ordinance accepting the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission to amend the terms of the 2007 zoning ordinance, known as ordinance number O2007-01-01, whereby the purpose is to amend the permitted use legend and table by adding recreational vehicle resort and to define recreational vehicle resort.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A letter was submitted requesting that the city consider amending the text of the zoning ordinance to allow for recreational vehicle resorts. So the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed a proposed text amendment at their meeting on Monday, April 28th. And these are the amendments that were considered to the zoning ordinance. So first, defining an RV resort as being a facility for recreational vehicles offering a range of amenities and designed as a short-term tourist destination. So this is set apart from what is typically thought of as an RV park, and that this is for more of a tourist destination. This is an establishment that has several amenities. A person from the Victron that submitted the letter that asked that we consider this also an attendance tonight that might be able to answer some questions on the difference between a recreational vehicle resort and typically thought of. Also on that ordinance was requiring a specific use permit and order for zoning classifications, agricultural, residential, light industrial, heavy industrial, and commercial. And then also requiring supplemental conditions that would require a site plan and interior civil plans to be submitted. The Planning and Zoning Commission, I mentioned, they reviewed this and ultimately they recommended approval of it, but there was some discussion on the definition if it needed to be more detailed, provide that distinction. There was some discussion on additional language to kind of establish some kind of precedent, so that way we can be consistent across those requests. Ultimately, it was recommended for approval and determined that these could be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And we do have a couple of people that were on the Planning and Zoning Commission that were at the meeting that could speak more on behalf of the discussion that sat there. And we got the person from the company that submitted the letter requesting the change also in attendance to answer questions.
Ask any questions for Mr. Allen? This is the first reading. We'll open it up, open the public hearing up to anyone in the audience that would like to address agenda item number 11 in regards to the recreational vehicle. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, my name is Paul Stroud. I'm at 105 Baxter Drive in Boston. Actually, I'm with Fisher Energy, representing the developer. So a little bit of background, you guys may or may not know, we acquired the bankruptcy, the truck stop after reconstruction last October. They included some additional land in the rear of the property. We're really excited to hope to get to work and begin submitting planning for the next couple of months on completion and renovation of the store. I know it's been an eyesore for everybody. I'm sure a lot of folks probably do drive up and down 35 North. Again, this company, Bootlicker Energy, we kind of specialize in travel centers. We own the Best Northtown Travel Center in Italy, and then we also have one in Burleson, so come by, stop by, get some barbecue and so on. But we have traditional land in the back, about 5 or 6 acres. It sort of sits a little bit higher than the property, and we thought that RV resort would be the best potential use for that. There's reasonably pretty negative connotations that most people have whenever they think of an RV park. But this is really intended to draw more folks that are traveling up and down 35 from other states, draw more folks that are going to the lake. There's a couple of dozen RV parks of various qualities, outside of the city limits in the county. So what we're asking to do is to have the right to come in, apply for an SUP. We would work having all of these folks driving here, these days, our fees are like $70,000, $80,000, all of these folks driving and going somewhere else, being able to stop and spend their money here, those will, hopefully our work will work, but we can have the user somewhere else. So, this is the first step for us to be able to apply for that SUP, so, I hope you guys consider this approval, and so, I'll be seeing you guys again later. Thank you very much, and I'm here if you have any questions or thoughts.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to address this specific agenda item?
There were two major concerns from planning and zoning when we discussed the last Monday. That feels like a lot longer ago. Short term was something that we felt like could use some clarification, because it's kind of a gray area that could be abused potentially, so we don't want to be super restrictive, but we also don't want this resort to turn into a park. And that's the question is, what is the difference? So we really were trying to define the parameters and clarify park versus resort, but Richard mentioned there really isn't anywhere specifically in the ordinances where this would fit. So I really just want to make sure you guys were aware that this was a discussion piece, and that it's still a concern, even though we didn't all say yay, it was a yay question mark. So, the other concern is if there were to be a change of ownership, would we have to, have them reapply for a specific use permit again? Because again, change of ownership could mean change of use, and that gets into, again, gray areas that not really sure how we would address unless there were a complaint from a citizen, and then that would be a code enforcement issue, but not sure if anything could really be clarified to make that a little more precise. But that was our biggest concern with planning and zoning.
Would you like to, Mr. Parker, I think that-
If I may respond to just a couple of things. Yes, those were a couple of items that were brought up. Ultimately, what was addressed was that those could be conditions on this, because, so the planning and zoning commission or the council, either entity, you have the ability to add conditions on the specific use permit that's then included on the resolution that approves that specific use permit. And so both of those could be included as conditions on each individual permit on that case-by-case basis.
Sure, go ahead.
Hey guys, very valid concerns with the, very valid concerns. Briefly, one, no problem if, I feel, I guess, it may be a little bit more appropriate, but of course, it's you all's decision if you want to have some kind of change of ownership clauses or conditions there. My family's owned the company 30 years, I'm 30 years old, we don't intend to go anywhere, and so that's not necessarily a concern for us. I would say, of course, I know that that's why we would have the ordinance and landscaping plans and so on, so that if we go away or whatever happens, the same requirements, which we would approve the amenities and so on, any successive owner would have to meet those. The second item is in terms of what's long-term versus short-term. I typically consider monthly. The big difference is that an RV, like a trailer park where people live, typically they'll offer monthly and or annual rates for folks to stay there. We don't intend to do that. We would intend to offer daily, at the very most weekly rates for folks to be there, and we would like to strongly encourage anybody there for more than a week to leave. So we're only going to be giving, I think, 40 or 50 parking spaces. So we would plan our room for most people to go there and live there. And if somebody wants to live somewhere, I'm pretty confident we're going to be the least affordable option.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you putting an age limit, like, some of the parks that my husband and I travel to with our RV, the RV's not be more than 10 years old? Or if it is, you have to send them a photo of what it looks like. And part of that is to maintain a certain appearance, if we consider anything like that. I mean, I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, honestly, I've never thought of that. I'm open to it. I would likely probably ask for the leeway to be able to decide that as we go. I frequently find that in any development we do, the problems we expect to have aren't the ones we have, and then there's unexpected issue with that, generally. And maybe that's something, again, if you want to try to review with staff when we get to the SUP discussions, happy to consider that. But it is a first idea, honestly. And then, by the way, we frequently build, we think when our rules is going along with it, murals at our locations. Most of the time we do our shopping center, especially one with some highway frontage, and we pay for it, so we would have to pay for it, of course. And so, if there is somebody, if there is a muralist or somebody in the city, we'd be delighted to do a custom mural to the city on the side that faces I-35. I think that's great. Hopefully people go there, take pictures, and then buy stuff from our stores.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to address this specific agenda item, number 11? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on to agenda item 12, hear and deliberate on city manager report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let's start with the reading that. Give you some updates on some projects that are going on in Hillsborough, not school stop. I had discussions with the owner of not school stop, and we gave him a 7-day decree of receiving citations. He wants to develop it for future business uses, so he's going to come up with a game plan to address issues we have. So, hopefully we'll be able to work that out. Amigos, staff met with the new owners. They were providing a year's report to the building official. They want to start off in the middle of July. Anyone Motel, they have finished the electricity. The fire alarm system is completed. There's no official open day. Walmart started their remodel. Staff has completed several plumbing inspections. They will start construction for the fire-related projects very soon. Their building is standard board meeting, May 15th, here at Historic City Hall, 6 p.m. Staff will have
Chief of Police / Assistant City Manager.
Welcome that. They provided the refreshments reception just before the council meeting. We appreciate that. Curb cleanup, mutual would pause that initiative. Overall, these auto parts, the construction is almost finished. The store is completed by May 16th, and return to the Raleigh's. Currently, we don't have an official opening date. Self-storage, headquarters concrete for the pad. Some good news, we're able to fill the second electricity officer position. They started full-time yesterday. Thank you.
Tony, while you were talking about that, is there an update on mall demolition that was made yet?
Yes, for the, proposed date is June 2nd. So going back to goal 1, which is responsible and equitable growth. Thank you, Richard, for updating the list of, development projects that are at some point in the pipeline. You can see those numbers have greatly increased because we're trying to be very diligent about putting numbers behind each thing that has a strong possibility of coming forward. So this would include property that has sold for the purposes of development, and we know enough about it to have numbers associated. But as you can see, they're all at varying stages of readiness to actually deliver. That total is a pretty big total. So just over 2,600 new single-family houses, where we currently have about 3,100 single-family houses on the ground right now. So that's a significant amount of additional growth anticipated. It does not include about 260 units of multifamily. Obviously, interact with the budget so that they can find out, essentially how their tax dollars are being spent. And it gives us the ability to include pictures and explanations they call it a budget story, kind of for each component part of the budget, so that people know what they're looking at and satisfy themselves in terms of their questions. We also continue to use multiple different forms of media to try to get the word out about different city initiatives and to receive input from different people with questions or concerns, and have continued to make videos of meetings like this from on the city's YouTube channel. And then goal 4 is to deliver efficient and effective government. I want to shout out our city secretary for pulling off another municipal election. We're happy that went well and all the process was followed. And always please to hold the election, always please when the election is finished. So that is where we stand on that. Comprehensive plan, as you know, we kicked that off last week. And there's been a fair amount of input collected, but I would just encourage anyone who has not filled out survey 1. There are going to be 3 surveys in the whole process. So survey 1 is just kind of where are we starting with this thing? What are your impressions of the city at this point? What are the things that you think are the most important? And that's just really, really valuable as the city moves forward trying to make decisions. What are we protecting? We want to do it based on what our citizens think is most important. So please, it takes, 5-10 minutes to fill out, but please do it. And then there will be a second survey in about another month or so. And then the final survey is specifically around businesses. So we want everybody in the world to fill out the first 2 surveys, and you might not even have to fill out the 3rd survey. So survey that. The rest of this goal is really around council management collaboration and having consistency across departments, including employee retention and professional development. We continue to do customer service training for all of our citizen-facing employees. As we know, that's important. And then our upcoming event, we have Churro Fest on May 17th. We're excited. There's a lot of buzz about that online, so we're hoping that it's going to be a fantastic event and certainly expect that it will. Any questions for me on any of the 4 elements?
Any questions for me? Next item on the agenda, hold a closed session under the provisions of section 557.071 of the Government Code in regards to economic development. Show the council in closed session at 6:00.
Public comments were in the beginning, guys. You want to scroll up to the very beginning right after the pledge. So, just to let y'all know, public comment was in the beginning. And yes, PDF, I did read the speech. I was nervous as hell. I couldn't figure out how to type in a comment on a live stream. It's warming me. I was nervous, but yeah. I put up what I wanted to say, but I wanted to mention about the homeless and the treatment of how the vague laws affect, but I also wanted to mention how like Lindemann too, so I drafted up a 3-minute speech and sent it off to help to have it re-looked at and everything. And as you see, Carolina came up, BZ went last, I went first, Carolina, and then BZ went. Yes, they're both live too. So if y'all want, you know, I can't drop nothing, I don't have comments, I can't type. But like I said, BZ Watchdog is also live. And Carolina's live too. You want to be famous? That's fine. There you go.
It doesn't matter to me. It's a public area. I stand where I want.
Yep. I don't care. I'll take a look at it either on the way back, PDF, or tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but probably Thursday or Friday. He's been trying to block me. I don't know who he is. I was standing over here after I talked, and here they started coming in, kind of coming up behind me, so I decided to move to the other side of the room. There's a whole police town just resigned in Texas. Whole police department just resigned. Can't remember who it was though right now, but it happened today or yesterday. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. Y'all can jump over to either Carolina or BC Watchdogs. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. I'm on their Wi-Fi, so thanks for coming in. Thank you everyone. Don't forget to hit the like. Check, drop that link, PDF. Drop. Oh, you cut it? Go to BZ Watchdog. drop your link to that video PDF. Or Rami, if you can. All right, talk to y'all later.